The following is a Simpronto media production.
Leaders, real life leaders.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode, and I'm so excited to introduce to you Tom Rath, and he is the New York Times bestselling author of How Full Is Your Bucket and Strength Finders 2.0, and he now has a new book out called Life's Great Question. And so we're so excited to have him. I also have my co-host, Heather Remick. Heather, say hi.
Hi, everyone.
All right. So, Tom, welcome. Tell listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I've spent the last 15 or 20 years working with organizations and leaders in particular, essentially trying to figure out how can we do a better job of helping people to have better health and well-being because of the work that they do on a regular basis. And, I've realized early on in my career that we spend a majority of our waking hours doing work. And right now, the current relationship between most people and their jobs is really not doing a very good service to the person, even if organizations are getting a lot of productivity out of it. So spend most of my time trying to reverse that equation as much as I can.
Awesome. Well, we wanted today give people just a little taste of your book. And so I know one of the questions that you ask and answer in that book is why we should ask others how they contribute instead of what they do for a living. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, one of the things that I've realized from interviewing quite a few people as a part of this book is that essentially most of us do pretty meaningful work on a day-to-day basis, and it serves a valuable purpose for society, but we just often fail to acknowledge that on a day-to-day basis and recognize the meaning it creates for other people. And because we often don't have time to do that or fail to do that, we end up moving through our day just responding to things and encountering more stress than we otherwise should. And so what I've learned is that when we can frame our work around the specific contributions we're making, it gives us more energy to do what we do best and feel better about it at the end of the day.
Awesome. And I know that you answer the question like why investing in the development of others is crucial to our collective future. So what are some tips that you have for people of how they can do a good job of investing in the development of others?
Yeah, one of the things I've learned from a lot of the research that I've been a part of on strengths, which you mentioned, is that one of the most valuable things that you can do for people that you work with is to spend as much time as possible in a given day trying to identify maybe hidden or more dormant talents in people that they haven't noticed themselves. I talk a little bit in this book, Life's Great Question, about how I grew up in a family of teachers and psychologists, and I think when I was growing up, I went through every block stacking, Rorschach psychological test you could imagine. And then as a part of building Strengths Finder, I went through that about 15 times. And I still didn't think I had any talent to be a writer in this lifetime until my grandfather spotted something real specific and called that out when I was, I think, about 25 or 26 years old, and gave me a real specific challenge to work on a book with him. And I decided to give it a shot because he thought he saw something, and that really changed the trajectory of my career. And it was all because one person made a specific observation and gave me a challenge to do something. So what I learned from that experience is that if you're in a leadership position or you're contributing to the growth and development of family members or friends or people you care about, you kind of need to always be on the lookout for talents that other people might not have seen yet.
I love that. Yeah. And let me ask you this. So your books are really, really great, and we've used them ourselves, in particular Strength Finder 2.0, like in teams, like we have our management team read it together and do different things. So how can leaders use the concepts in Life's Great Questions to help their teams?
Yeah, one of the things I realized a few years ago is that so often we pull teams together in particular because they're people who have the same interests that we do, sometimes the same types of passions and personalities and the like. And we all get together and we say, yeah, we're wound up about this specific cause or this product or this purpose. And we start running downstream as fast as we can with great intentions. And then usually about 6 months later, maybe a year later, we all get back together and we realize, you know what? We all had the same talents and intentions, and we started running full steam ahead, doing the same things, and realized that we didn't have someone helping us to make sure we were nurturing our relationships. We didn't have someone to make sure we were kind of executing and organizing and scaling and doing all these things. So what I've tried to put together for readers of Life's Great Question is a tool that does a couple things. It's an inventory people go through where, one, it gives them a much more human version of a resume, kind of a baseball card to say, here's who I am, here's what's most important to me, here are the big roles I play in life, here are the most influential life experiences that have impacted who I am, and here's how I want to contribute. And so it gives each person a profile so that they can sit around as a team before they embark on a given effort and say, here's how each person wants to optimally contribute to this team, and to do it in a more complementary way so that instead of doing the same things and overlapping for the next 6-12 months, we're thinking very strategically about how we can complement and balance one another to be more effective and more efficient as an operating unit.
Well, you say that when we feel unfulfilled or unhappy at work, obviously our first instinct is just kind of, hey, let's look for a new job, right? But you argue that we can make changes in our current role to kind of make us happier without looking for a new job. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, my hunch is that most people are too quick to jump to the extreme of saying, I need a whole new job, I need to start over completely, when in most cases, there's a lot of room for growth and more efficiency and higher well-being by optimizing and framing the job that you have today into one that can be a lot more gratifying and productive than it is right now. And so one simple thing to start with in that regard is, in most cases, the person you work for, the manager or leader that you look to for guidance, they want you to achieve a certain outcome that's important for the organization and your clients and your customers. They don't care as much as you may think about how you get there, the hours you work, the way you do things. And you don't need to assume that you have to do things the same way your predecessor did or one of your peers is doing right now. If you can make the structure of your job and the way you describe your job and the way you frame it work so that it fits your personality, it fits your style and what you need from a structural standpoint during the day, but you still get the outcomes achieved that are needed in that job. In most cases, managers and leaders will be pretty supportive. And I think it's also important to step back and say, how can you surround yourself with people who balance out who you are from both a strength standpoint and from a weakness standpoint, so that collectively as a team, you can achieve what needs to get done.
Hey guys, I want to take a minute real quick to tell you about this retreat that I'm putting together. It's going to be just 10 lucky people that I'm going to select, and we are going to stay in a 5-star resort in Miami, and it's going to be pamper time. But the most important thing, I'm going to open up my books. I'm going to show you everything. You're going to leave there with my Word docs. You're going to leave with a USB drive with all the information that I've possibly done, every system in place. A lot of times you go to these conferences, you get all jazzed up, but you don't walk away with anything. You're going to walk away with this retreat with tons of systems. Go to chantelray.com/retreat to learn more.
Calling all entrepreneurs, leaders, and business owners. Are you looking to grow and scale your business to help more people, increase your profits, and build the business of your dreams? Then you need to attend the Grow and Scale Now Summit, a free virtual event where you can learn from top leaders and thinkers who have grown and scaled their businesses by the millions. Unlock your potential and discover the secrets to take your business to the next level. Click the link in the show notes to claim your free ticket.
When people say, well, I'm just going to kind of go look for something else, a lot of people will say, just follow your passion. Whatever your passion is in life, that's what you should be following. But why is this bad advice, and what do you suggest in its place?
Yeah, I think people suggest focusing on passion with some of the best of intentions because we all eventually want to be doing something we love. The challenge about starting with your passion is that assumes that the things that you're passionate about, which could be your hobbies or interests or just things you're interested in, should kind of be the center of the world, and everything else needs to come into alignment with that and revolve around that. When, in reality, the world doesn't work that way too often. What I've found to be a better approach is to start by asking what the world needs and what the community around you needs, what your clients need, what your customers need, and then to work back from that starting point to who you are as an individual and how you can meet the needs of the communities and circles that surround you. I think essentially when you start with that, it's basically the demand side of the equation, and you view your own talents as the supply, then you can make that supply and demand meet in a much more effective and meaningful way.
And I think that people are starting to listen to more podcasts. They're listening to more self-improvement type things, reading self-improvement type books. And you argue that we've kind of gotten self-improvement all wrong. Can you explain this?
Yeah. And, as you ask that question, makes me think a part of the problem is the self part of self-improvement, where we've essentially done a lot of work over the last 10 to 25 years around self-improvement and understanding our own personality and self-development programs. And don't get me wrong, I think self-awareness is critical, but almost all of those efforts focus inward on who we are as individuals, and they, to some degree, prevent us from spending enough time focused externally on what other people need. And, one of my favorite quotes and what helped me to anchor a lot of my most recent work on this book, Life's Great Question, is essentially one of my favorite thoughts from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And I've tried to use that question of his every single day to align how I distribute my time and what I do just on a moment by moment basis throughout the day. And it may sound like an existential question, but I've used it to structure my time so that when I wake up, sure, I need to respond to some things and move through my inbox and the like and get back to phone calls. But if I can spend at least an hour, ideally more time, doing things that are very directly oriented towards the development and growth of other people, those are more likely to be efforts that are meaningful, and they're more likely to be efforts that continue to grow in my absence, whether I'm spending time on that a week from now or a month from now or a decade from now.
Awesome. Let me ask you this. So we have a lot of, the younger generation has entered the workforce and they're starting to take on some leadership roles. So what advice do you have for the next generation of leaders?
I would say that the next generation of leaders need to figure out how to ensure that most of their efforts and energies in a given workday are oriented around the people they hope to serve. And, it's one of the most positive generational differences I've seen in some of the research that I've studied is that the generation entering the workforce today, they want to go to work for an organization that has a very clear and meaningful mission. They don't want to go work for a company that's making cigarettes or producing things that create societal ills. They want to know that the work they're doing makes a difference. And I think that gives us an opportunity to help people really early on in their careers to connect their daily efforts with the purpose that serves. So let me give you a couple examples where in food service, for example, if the chef or cook who's preparing food is stuck in a back room with no windows and they can't see customers eating the food they prepare, they make poor quality food. They feel less satisfaction about doing it, and they're less productive throughout the day. When in comparison to if they can see customers eating the food they consume. Same thing applies with radiologists, who I would have assumed, based on my interaction with radiologists, they would know that they're helping people who are battling cancer and the like. But when scientists append a photo of a patient to a scan, those radiologists, they produce reports that are 33% longer, and it increases their diagnostic accuracy by 40+%. Same thing occurs for software developers and people who are manufacturing tractors or MRI machines. When scientists study this, we've got to find ways to bring the face of the customer, the client, into the work we do so that there's a little bit more humanity in our daily work.
I love it. All right. Well, I want you to end on giving us one very practical piece of advice, kind of like you just gave us, very practical, that someone will learn from reading this book.
One of the most practical pieces of advice I've heard and would share with aspiring leaders in particular is that I think one of the most powerful things that you can do for another human being over the next quarter century will be to ask a very good question of another person based on what you've observed, and to keep your devices completely stowed away and turned off, and to keep your mouth closed, and to genuinely listen to that person's answer for as long as you can, and then to provide some insights around that. I think that kind of genuine, focused, concentrated listening and asking good questions will be increasingly valuable given where everything's headed.
I do not do a good job of that. I definitely need to do a better job of that. I am a massive multitasker, so I like to get multiple things. And people really think that I'm not listening. Someone will be like, well, she didn't listen to you because she was typing. And I will literally verbatim say exactly what they said.
She does.
I'm really, really good at multitasking. So I literally can have a full length conversation. I can hear what you're saying and type a full text at the same time and regurgitate back what you said. But it doesn't make that person feel special by any means. So I definitely need to do a better job of doing that and get my multitasking ways out of the way. Well, I don't have any more questions for you. Heather, what about you?
No, I think he should tell us, where can we find this book?
Yes. So tell listeners where they can find you, where they can follow you, and more information about where they can get this book.
Yeah, they can find more about Life's Great Question and the Contribify profile and website at contribify.com. And they can learn more about any of my books or work at tomrath.org.
Awesome. Well, this has been amazing. Thanks so much for being with us, Tom. And we will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real Life Leadership. If you'd like to get the show notes or access more resources, log on to reallifeleaders.com/podcast to get the show notes from this episode and any other resources we might have mentioned. And also, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to review or rate this podcast on Apple Podcasts to help spread the word. And if you have any leadership questions you want answered, email podcast@reallifeleaders.com.